to start by responding to the presentations and to pick up on some of the key ideas that I can reflect on. So this morning was very interesting. There was some language that I do want to reiterate, because I think it's important when we're thinking about research in decolonising or radical ways, how we use words. Language matters in this discussion. So here's some key words that came up this morning. Intersection, interdisciplinary, disseminating, advocacy, subverting traditional ways, complicated processes, political advocacy, new methodologies, reflection on our work, a decolonised paradigm, resistance, social science, alternative frames, approaching reality, forgetfulness, silence, territorial disputes, making memory public, rescuing public action, anthropocentric, severe human rights abuses, the limits of human rights, cultural rescue, knowledge management, alternative narratives, new technology, reflections, traditional medicine, sitting at the table, indigenous knowledge, intercultural knowledge, conflict resolution, solutions to solve conflict peacefully, stepping out of traditional ways of doing research. That would be a whole curriculum for teaching about research that came out of the discussion this morning, the conversation this morning. Some of it was music to my ears, and some of the words I'm still processing and thinking about. So out of the group discussion, I got some more language in terms of critical pedagogies and how our research feeds into a decolonising process. So, recovering lost knowledge, liberating awareness, educating for change, going to community, women's knowledge, indigenous knowledge, African descendants knowledge, collectivity, demystifying, taking advantage of knowledge that exists, not just one more project, finding a methodology, not using words like race, the importance of language. Research can be superficial. Criticism implies something bad. The status quo. Communities see themselves as religious, not critical. How can we maneuver? Then the other question, not just the US, other settler societies can never be post-colonial. Space and visibility can be radical. It's important to make histories and languages visible. to meet the needs of our students. There are subversive ways of doing work. Settler colonialism is pervasive and decolonizing is threatening. Collaborative conversations. Our work is considered service, not research. Cultural momentum, visibility, listening, humility. The role of our rural communities and how anthropologists have a particular Western view and may know little about the context of Central America. Social cartography, displaced populations, trying to help how to strengthen local organizations, how to generate collective knowledge, how to include women, how to work in tricky political contexts. What is a peace process? How to create safe areas? How do we empower communities? How do we set up cooperatives? And what is the role of research and awareness raising? So all of those terms and phrases I think are really important for this conversation, some of which I think we could critically interrogate. What does it mean, for example, to empower? But before we get there, I just want to, spell out some basic ways that I might think about these things, and I have thought about some of these things. So firstly, I want you to think about the agency of land, the agency of water, the agency of the environment. So just take a few minutes and try and think what you think about that. Does the land have agency? Can the land speak and act for itself? Do waterways have agency? Does water have agency? Then my next question for you to think about is, what then of the agency of our communities, for me of Indigenous communities, what kind of agency do they have? What kind of agency do women have? Do the poor and vulnerable have? What kind of agency do the victims of human rights abuses have? What is the role of agency? Now, I ask that question because I think it is important researchers know the answer for themselves before they go and work with my communities. Because if researchers think our communities know nothing, value nothing, speak nothing, do nothing, then researchers should not come anywhere near us. We don't want them. Right? It's a particular kind of arrogance that researchers often possess, because they don't think we know what we want. They don't think we have dreams. Or if we do have dreams, they tell us, your dream is unrealistic. You will never get your treaty recognised. You will never speak your language again. You will never be sovereign in this country. Our story for many Indigenous communities and our story in New Zealand is if we gave up on those dreams, we would stop living. We may as well die. Our people have dreams. Our people, and they're not just like fantasies that are never going to come true. They're dreams that we want to realise. And we know there is knowledge to realise those dreams. And we know it takes power. And we know it takes resources. But we also know before any of those can work, we have to believe in ourselves. So I think it's, for researchers, important not to hold ourselves to a kind of rhetoric about radical or decolonising research if it's just rhetoric. I don't know if you've read Eve Tuck's and Wayne Yang's paper called Decolonisation is Not a Metaphor. That would be a good paper to read and maybe have it translated for students. Because for us, decolonisation is a real process, and it has two major dimensions. One is what we're trying to negotiate with the dominant society in New Zealand, how we negotiate with the settler state, how we get them to change, how we get system change. That's one dimension. That's important. But the second one is equally important. How do we understand ourselves? How do we exercise compassion? How do we love ourselves? How do we forgive ourselves? How do we forgive our relations who may have been complicit with the coloniser? So in my case, our own tribal relationships helped invade our tribe, and they still sit on our land. So how do we get on with life when we have these histories that often keep us in a big stew, like a soup, stewing away, like those are our relations, they betrayed us. We can spend a lot of energy on that.